YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, RAWCHAA, QADASH, the oneness to GMS who told me this truth, Habakkuk 2 and 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. So we have a post here, so EU Parliament mandatory CHIP implant for EU citizens, published study. So the EU wants to tag its citizens like cattle and can start May 2023. So the EU has been studying mandatory CHIP implants since 2017 and has an in-depth published study examining the technology and the barriers needed to overcome in order to CHIP their population. So we have an image here which shows the VAX in the center and all the things that can stem and flow off from it. So VAX and the workplace, against pandemics, against for security, economic and business implications for VAX, hesitancy, trust, misinformation, health, and then it spirals off into some smaller ones which we can't really see there. So the original publication, so economic and scientific policy, the use of CHIPs implants for workers. Wow. So that brings us to Revelation 13:16. So if it's for workers, Revelation 13:16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And Revelation 13:17, if it decides to load. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Okay, so it says the abstract. This paper briefly explains the technology of RFID chip implants, explores current applications, and considers legal, ethical, health, and security issues relating to their potential use in the workplace. So it says who prepared it there, who wanted it, who authorized it. So the legal issues identified. Legal issues, although other legislation is relevant, the main legal challenges to the compulsory use of RFID chips in the workplace would seem to derive from data protection and human rights legislation. Even where RFID chip use was truly voluntary, this legislation would still be relevant, especially in respect of data protection. In the case of voluntary applications, it would be necessary to ensure that the use was genuinely voluntary and that no disadvantage was seen to accrue to those individuals who declined to take a CHIP implanted, or that any pressures, direct or indirect, were exerted on those invited to participate. Okay. So what's this? Who? IHS amendments. The benefit for globalists who are clearly bent on micro control of its citizens are who? Amendments, endemic treaty, blah 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 blah. These amendments will permit the suspension of Article 1 and 3 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU, thereby overcoming the legal and ethical considerations that mandatory CHIPing of EU residents would otherwise have as barriers to its horrible, unethical, immoral network branding its citizens. No doubt the chipping will work with the VAX passport they intend to roll out. I posted this video on the Substack, but I'm seriously hoping this gets shared to Europeans who are not yet my readers. So this is Nigel Farage, Tony Blair's remarks at Davos. Let's click and play.
Davos is, of course, going on at the moment, and the great Tony Blair is at Davos. He is rumoured to want now to take over from Klaus Schwab as the boss of it. Here are some words of advice from Tony Blair today.
In the end, you need the data. You need to know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been. Some of the vaccines that will come on down the line will be multiple shots. So you've got to have for reasons to do with the healthcare more generally, but certainly for a pandemic or for vaccines, you've got to have a proper digital infrastructure, and many countries don't have that. In fact, most countries don't have that.
So there he is, there's Tony Blair. He wants us to have multiple shots and for all of it to be digitised so the state knows exactly what our status is. Pure evil is all I can say.
Okay. So ethical issues. Further ethical issues relate to health and safety concerns, the efficacy of policy, department, economic and scientific policy, the technology as the secure system, equity and choice, and again in parallel with legal issues, religious concerns, health concerns. The study identifies expressed health and safety concerns. Health and safety worries concerns have been expressed over the health and safety of RFID CHIP implants in four main areas, which is carcinogenicity, migration, interactions with MRI signals, and the impact of pharmaceutical effectiveness. There have been no systematic studies of health impacts in human wearers. There are a number of reports of carcinogenic effects, mainly in specific strains of mice. However, it appears that this probably reflects the unique sensitivity of these species and is not trans-species phenomenon. Potential mechanisms suggest any similar effects in human to be unlikely. Studies of the potential interactions between MRI scanning and chip implants appear to have excluded any significant effects, although the local details of scan can be physically masked by the chip overlaying the area of interest. So don't worry, we'll stick your chip someplace else. So this problem can easily be overcome by inserting the chip into areas of the body where scans are not likely to be required. It is suggested that the inter-species differences in the characteristics of subdermal layers make significant migration unlikely, although this cannot be categorically excluded. So where's the best place to chip Europeans? So early reports of implanted chips suggest the upper arm as an injection site, although more recent applications seem to favour the web of skin between the thumb and first finger, usually on the left hand in the right hand dominant individuals. This has the benefit of being relatively unobtrusive, as well as perhaps less likely to encounter significant migration due to anatomical constraints compared to the upper arm. So RFID tags in pharmaceuticals circulating. So the study names a side effect that may come from the confusion RFID tags in the pharmaceutical products that the European citizens took, if I read this correctly. So concerns regarding the impact of RFID technology on the efficacy of pharmaceuticals appear to stem from the proposed use of RFID tags as a security measure to label containers of pharmaceuticals. This would therefore involve scanning of the bulk compound, any risk of an effect in vivo in scanning the compound circulating within the bloodstream when briefly scanning for an RFID chip would be extremely limited, as only a small proportion of the substance would be exposed during scanning. Security problems. So possible security problems, it would seem that at present the RFID chip technology, which is essentially similar to that used in a debit card, also credit cards and similar smart systems, is not entirely secure. Security concerns include eavesdropping, cloning, disabling unauthorized tag modification, although since their initial development there have been a number of schemes promoted to increase their security, usually with some sort of form of encryption. It seems from the literature that even the idea is swiftly followed by other researchers reporting some way of breaching the security measure proposed. It's tech gets hacked. Passive or active, do we need to plug in Europeans so their chip can read and write? So implantable RFID chips can be passive, designed to read only, or active, where the data can be stored on the chip and the device has a read-write capability. Although chips are also available that transmit a signal, the power requirements for such devices mean that they need a larger size or need to be connected to a separate power source. Both of these factors mitigate against their ready use as implanted devices. Only the passive devices are considered in this paper, although many of the considerations concerning their use will also apply to active devices. How comfortable are these chips? So the chips consist of 3 parts: the integrated circuit as a means of acquiring power from the reader, and an antenna for receiving signals from the transmitting signals to a reader. For a human and an animal use, these must be encapsulated within biocompatible materials. Non-implantable devices used for commercial applications or animal applications may be encapsulated in polymers that are unsuitable for human implantation. The chip material in contact with human tissue must not harm, inflame, or change the composition of that tissue. Undesirable local or system effect in the human body must be avoided. Moreover, the chemical stability of the encapsulating package is essential, with good resistance to attacks from harsh internal environments inside the human body. It goes into some acids and other things there, blah blah blah. Glass and ceramics can withstand long periods of resistance to gas or fluid ingress, ranging from months, tens of years, depending on the material's thickness. So it looks like it just goes on for a little bit there. So this is what they're planning. This is what they have in store for the people, not just Europeans. This would be worldwide. Inshallah.